I read there's a New Yorker article a little bit ago called "I'm sick of staring at myself on Zoom," so I have a little thing to cover my up my face. But it's lovely to be with all of you tonight, um, and just a big thank you to Lauren, to Adam, to everyone who helped put this together. Mountain Stream. It's very precious in this day and age to have these spaces to gather with Kali and Amita, and it takes a lot to kind of keep them running. So just that list of events that were kind of uh, spoken to is really precious to have nearby you or even just available online. So just a big anumotana, that's monk for way to go to everyone who's helping hold this space. And there was that kind invitation to offer support. With Mountain Stream, I hope people offer in line with their inspiration. When it comes to us monks, many of you may know in the Theravada forest tradition, we don't touch money or use money. And every morning I go for alms, or every weekday morning at Pike Place in Seattle, and people give food, and I have a place to stay, so I'm well taken care of. I think Ajahn Amro's done the math, and it takes about as much to care for a monk as it does to care for a Great Dane. So I have what I need, and really please consider just um, yeah. There's this is completely given, and the best way you can repay these teachings is to practice them beautifully and sincerely. So I hope you all do. I think for context, my name's Ajahn Nisabho. Ajahn is a sort of the label for a monk over ten years. I grew up in Spokane and went to college in Portland before going to Thailand and encountering the lineage of Longpo Cha, Ajahn Chah. Uh, and the Thai forest tradition is a very pure and beautiful tradition. Um, Monastics really hold to many of the, or most of the sort of container the Buddha set down, what we call the Vinaya. So we don't touch money, we don't use money, we try to eat one meal a day. We can't store food or ask for anything unless we're sick, which was the Buddhist way of making us not be able to cut ourselves off from in a spiritual cocoon. Um, and so every day in Thailand, the monks will go for alms early in the morning. And going to Thailand after college, I really felt like I encountered some of the most pure beings I'd ever met and found a sense of purpose that I felt like I and much of the world, I think, is very hungry for. And I think you can't meet, teachers like that without being shaken to some extent and really questioning your purpose in life. And I just found the teachings of the Buddha to be the most clear route I've ever found towards purifying the heart, as I'm sure many here have. Um, I was about 13 years ago, and I always felt called back to the Northwest. So about 4 years ago, I came back to Seattle and um, basically just came on faith in the sense that really believing that there were really good people here as well, and went for alms downtown at Pike Place, um, and just hoping that people would come and offer food. And in 4 years, we haven't gone hungry once. It's been beautiful to see the generosity that's hiding just underneath the surface of the world. And we're starting a monastery here called Clear Mountain Monastery. Some of you will know us from our online offerings. People are welcome to tune into those. We have online meditations and all that. Or if you're near Seattle, please come by. Either come downtown or come to our Saturday gatherings. We meet in a um, elementary school auditorium we call the Triple Gym. So we hope people tap in various ways. And yeah, eventually, we really hope to have an actual monastery where people can come and practice and monastics can live. Um, and in the meantime, it's just been very beautiful to see this large network of Kali and Nimitta spiritual friends forming around the US. So it's very good to meet all of you. And hopefully, this is the start of a long relationship, and encourage any of you who are able just to say hello, either in person if you're nearby or online if you ever get the chance. So we'll begin just by meditating together for about 25 minutes, and then I believe at 6:35 we'll take a 5-minute break. So begin by setting your body upright. Drawing your lower spine in like a spring. Propping up the upper spine. Pushing your head up, the top of your head against the sky, and dropping your chin slightly. Notice any tension in your eyes or forehead and soften it. Soften any tension in your jaw. Smile on the inside of your mouth. Soften any tension in your belly. Just allow your breathing to deepen and slow, naturally. Just center. Now, this is going to be one of the more meaningful guided meditations I know. You're welcome to follow along if you want. It's an instruction in letting go, Jaga, Patinisaga, in Pali. So first imagine you're in a white hospital room on a white bed in a white hospital gown. There's no door, no windows. And you're about to die. You're approaching that final moment. You've said your goodbyes. There's no one coming to visit. You've tied up all the loose ends. It's just you in this moment. If the hospital room is too sterile, you can instead imagine yourself in a moonlit grove, lying on moss near ferns in a stream, oak branches above and starlight through them. But similarly, your breath is coming shorter and shallower. You're about to die. So since your death is so near, first relinquish all those things, your material possessions, which you've accumulated. Mentally let them all go. Your house, your car, all your clothes, your books, the musical instrument. The Buddha Rupa, pictures, everything, your phone. Can you let it all go? It was never yours anyways. You can't take it with you. Notice as you do this a subtle sense of lightening in the heart. Subtle luminosity that grows when you let go. It's almost time now. Your death is almost here, any moment. So now can you let go of all your relationships? These identities. Yourself as a mother, a child, friend, a lover, a victim, a teacher, You're going to have to let go of all of these anyways. Can you give them back now? Give them back with love, but you will have to leave them. Wish those people their best. But then let it go. Notice the gentle brightening again in the heart. As it puts down what it could never really hold. Then relinquish even your name. It's here now, the moment. Your death. Right now. So, can you let go finally of even your body? Give even that back. Can you feel the gold luminosity of the chitta, of the heart? That's let go. What were you so afraid of? Can you feel gratitude to your teachers who have given you such a beautiful death? there's anyone left who you can't quite put down for now, just spread loving kindness to them, wish them well. They'll be okay. But also acknowledge you need to go. Just continue to sit in this state of lightness, luminous metta. Till the end of the meditation. For these last 5 minutes, you can also feel free to bring up a sense of metta or loving kindness towards all those in this room with you, the Zoom room or the meditation hall. Don't have to imagine sending metta out, but just imagine your heart is big enough to hold all those sitting nearby or in this room with all their sufferings, hopes. These spiritual friends who care about what you care about. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be well. That simple good wish and gratitude. Holding all those with you. So people can slowly open their eyes. But I would encourage everyone to not think of the meditation as over. We'll take a break, but just try to maintain whatever brightness in the heart was cultivated through the last few minutes. And note the difference in how you feel now compared to how you felt at the beginning. Often a richness in the heart, or a depth, a resonance, a lightness. And to also acknowledge that's one of the more intense meditations I know of. And if it struck deeply for anyone and they need to take a break or step outside, then obviously take that time. But I also find it's a very powerful practice in letting go and feeling what that allows the heart to resonate with when we do that, and seeing any threads that we have trouble letting go as well. So we'll take about 5 minutes and meet back here at 6:40 at least Pacific time, which I think might be different for all of you. I'm not sure. About 5 minutes. Has it been about 5 minutes, Lauren? Or
Yes,
yeah.
yes, you're good to go.
Okay, good. How's the volume? I want to be loud enough.
I think that sounds a lot better. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So how was that for people? Just give me some thumbs. Was super duper, somewhat hard. Of course, my computer has its little thing on. So good, good. Okay. Yeah, that's an Ajahn Brahmali is the first one I heard do that meditation, and I was very moved by it. But it's interesting for people. Sometimes, it really lets you see the uh, relationships or threads in your life which you aren't quite ready to let go of, and also really, I think letting go of the relationship and identity is often what hits people hardest, and just knowing that can be done with care and love, and that resonance continues on. But I find it to be a very meaningful meditation to do. About Usually I give it about twice a year to our community. So we'll do about a half an hour talk and then have time for Q&A. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So good to meet everyone. The talk I wanted to give tonight circles around a sutta, which is the word for the Buddha's discourses, called the Pansadovaka Sutta, which means the gold washer. And it goes like this. The Buddha says, a gold washer, to purify gold, would take gold and first wash out the coarse gravel. Having washed the coarse gravel, he would wash out the moderate impurities, that is, sand and coarse dust. Having washed out the moderate impurities, he would wash out the fine impurities, black dust, until he was left just with the gold. But it would be neither luminous nor pliable. So, blowing on it again and again, heating it until it was malleable and pliable, and then the goldsmith would be able to make of it whatever he wished. Even so, a practitioner intent on heightened mind purifies out the coarse impurities, that is, misconduct by body, speech, and mind. Having purified the coarse impurities, they purify themselves of the moderate impurities, that is, the intention towards sensuality, the intention towards ill will, the intention towards harming. Having purified the moderate impurities, that bhikkhu, which in this case we can take to mean practitioner for all of us, purifies themselves of the fine impurities, thoughts of one's homeland, thoughts of one's caste, but the color in Pali or the word in Pali is vana, which means color. So I think you can think of it as your career, your role, or red and blue, I think are very relevant for today. Thoughts of one's color, and thoughts of not wanting to be despised. Having purified themselves of these, a practitioner intent on heightened mind is left only with thoughts of Dhamma, but their mind is not yet unified or luminous, and is kept in place by the fabrication of forcible restraint. But after a time, having purified their mind, they the mind becomes luminous and unified, and whatever they turn it towards, they can accomplish that knowledge. So, such a beautiful sutta. And one of those moments where you realize that in the Buddha, we were given a teacher of a spiritual genius that I continue to be in awe of. Those last three fine impurities which we purify, the thoughts of one's homeland, thoughts of one's vana, color, caste, and thoughts of not wanting to be despised. And I like this sutta because it points to a few things. One is this simile of gold is relevant because what comes to the surface as we wash the gold is the impurities and the dirt. And often we really can fixate on these, the things that are still imperfect in our conduct, how we become angry, how we've lashed out at someone we know we shouldn't. Just coming out of the Thanksgiving season, I'm sure some people have had experience with family, and these things that we think we should have let go of, but they're still there. And to note that if we fixate on those and only see them, we can miss the fact that there's a subtle brightness growing in the background of our life and practice. In meditation, people will often miss what we call the light nimitta, which is a sort of sign of light that appears when the mind calms, because they're looking for a ball of light. And what they miss is that actually their whole mental landscape begins to get brighter. That can be the light nimitta. It's just a sense of light throughout the mental landscape. And similarly, when we practice, often people will look for certain kind of peak experiences to serve as landmarks. And they'll not realize that their whole mental landscape, their whole life has just gotten brighter. I remember a few years into practice, my mom, who's a meditator, said, retreats don't affect me like they used to. And then she realized it was because her whole life had become more of a retreat. And it's as if we usually map our lives onto this XY axis, success and failure. And with practice, what happens is there's a whole new axis, a Z axis that you begin to move through. And things can look almost identical on the surface of a life. We can have the same relationship, the same job, the same schedule almost. And yet something very deep is changing. And I think it was Ajahn who said, there's no fast shortcut on this path. This path is slow and slower, but compared to slower, slow is fast. And at the same time, things move very quickly. And we find that after 2 years, you can look back and realize, this moment I would have lashed out on, it doesn't hurt the same, or I didn't do it like I would have 2 years ago. Or, if you've gotten something, this spontaneous wish to give it to another. 2 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. Or after you've held the 5 precepts and not killed, you see someone slap a mosquito, and there's just this sense of almost being appalled, and this real sense of kind of care. Or the spider who you would have used to think was disgusting, suddenly you just feel is kind of cute. And noting that, because this gold that kind of glows in the chest, we can get so fixated on the impurities that rise to the surface, and often these will manifest in the head and our mental landscape and the thoughts. And we forget this kind of subtle glow that you can really tap into in the heart and begin to notice. And it's important to notice that gold, because we can fixate on the impurities that are rising to the surface. So I love that part of this image. And with me, the guided death meditation, you begin to touch that gold, you feel it. The next part I love about this simile is that just the coarse impurities, the simile being, or comparison being to gravel, which the dirt washer washes out, and this misconduct of body, speech, and mind. And obviously, this in a Buddhist concept or conception begins by holding the five precepts, giving up killing, giving up stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and other forms of wrong speech, and then intoxicants. And these aren't precepts given on high. It's a simple if-then statement. The Buddha is saying, if you want your mind to calm, to come to serenity, these things will keep it from doing so. And you don't have to take his word on it. Just try to meditate after you've lashed out in anger or lied or done something that compromises that deeper patterning in you and you feel it. And this is the beautiful feedback loop. The Buddha said, wisdom and morality wash each other like two hands wash each other. And as we meditate, that wisdom arises and we see how when you compromise virtue, you lose the ability to become calm and serene. So holding those precepts is essential, but taking it farther, because as you practice, the metrics of right and wrong often become less relevant and much more we can measure how we're refining our life, these kind of moderate and pure and fine impurities, through the language of beautiful and unbeautiful. What am I doing that was a little unbeautiful, like that way you exaggerated a little bit, or the slight sarcastic edge? And really noting like that's where your practice is at, is refining those sharp edges and polishing them and smoothing them out and being kind to yourself with that, but rejoicing in purifying wholesome states and purifying yourself of unwholesome states. Another really important metric that begins to be very relevant in our lives is trivial and non-trivial. When do you feel you're wasting your time? And with purifying impure speech, one thing I really like to point out is for most of us, speech is key. It's where so much of our karma gets created. And in the Vinaya, the Buddhist monastic code, there are several conditions we have to fulfill before we admonish or give feedback to another monastic. We have to do it at the right time. We have to do it honestly. We have to speak from a mind of loving kindness. And we have to ask permission and receive permission. And those four specifically, there's more, there's 15 actually, but those four are such an important firewall for a life, for any relationship. I think if people could keep those four, it really would change most people's lives completely. Because if you speak to someone with feedback, with even a sliver of annoyance, they sense it. It changes the whole tenor of the conversation. And often if you can just wait 15 minutes or an hour until you can just speak from a place of genuine spaciousness, a little more care, the whole conversation shifts. And I know one monk who had to wait an entire year before he could fulfill that condition, but most of the time you can do it before then. And asking for permission. I think it's such a beautiful getting buy-in from the other person. So in terms of refining speech, I love pointing to those. Pulling back from gossip. This is the great Achilles heel of so many of us. And really just making that determination, like, I will not gossip about people. And Saint Teresa of Avila was known for never saying about someone behind their back what she would not say to their face. That could be a bit much because there's times where you really do need to talk about a concern you have with another person, but you can frame those moments and say, look, I usually don't gossip or talk about others behind their back at all, but I need to bring this one thing up, and frame it, say what you need to say, and then put it down. Refining misconduct of speech. And in terms of leaning into this, it's not so much refraining from bodily misconduct, but leaning into bodily good conduct, samacharya. is the aspect of giving. And just to note that the Buddha, dana, giving, is the first paramita, the first spiritual quality in the 10 perfections. And another synonym for giving, chaga, generosity, is literally a synonym for nibbana, nirvana. This aspect of giving is just key from the very beginning of the path to the very end. And so there's a practice called the Saraniya practice where before you eat, you make sure to have given something. Our whole community in Seattle is working with this practice right now. And really taking that seriously. Obviously, sometimes you don't have a chance to give before you eat breakfast, but giving something every day. It's not as hard as it might sound. Bring some protein bars with you into the city. Bring a batch of cookies. Make a batch of cookies every week, and then just give a few to your coworkers every day, your neighbors, whatever it is. And we have one community member who, when he gives to someone on the street, he has three conditions, three rules about how he gives. He lowers himself to their physical level. He learns their name, and he touches their hand. So what would it mean to really take that practice on of giving every single day? Or when you're about to order something on Amazon, sometimes it's hard to not click the buy button, but can you click the buy button, but then change the address to a friend's address? Like channel that desire into a gift. It's easier sometimes to reverse the valence rather than cut things off. So give it instead of taking it. The next impurities we purify are the three wrong intentions that the Buddha pointed out. So this is the intention towards sensuality, the intention towards ill will, and the intention towards harmfulness. What is so meaningful about those three is that of the three wrong intentions the Buddha singled out, two of the three are about anger. And I think that's significant because we can live our lives in a state of a low hum of aversion. It's very easy, almost without noticing. Ajahn Brahmali says the two main functions of mindfulness in a day should be maintaining your morality, your virtue, and not dwelling in ill will. So I really want to emphasize that aspect of loving kindness in people. It is such a powerful thing. And first giving up the ill will and then moving into the loving kindness, or, both in tandem. But from the moment you wake up, notice how the mind will try to crystallize around something. The self begins to crystallize. And the easiest thing for it to crystallize around is the argument or the aversion. Or the thing you want, the obsession, the desire, the planning, but very often it's the argument. And so right when you wake up for the first 15 minutes of your day, can you be very on guard and just develop loving kindness before you even move? Bring your awareness to the heart and get a glow of metta, of loving kindness going for the first 60 seconds of your day or 2 minutes. And then just for the first 15 minutes, keep that loving kindness going. And it will pay dividends through the rest of the day because you're crystallizing your self-structure around love instead of aversion. Make a practice of, if you want, often a phrase of loving kindness can become rote very quickly. I'm sure many of us have had this experience where it works for 2 days and you're like, I figured it out. And then on day 3, it ceases having its potency. One way of practicing metta that can stay alive, though, almost always, is really keeping it very immediate, relevant, and alive, basically. So before you walk into a house or a doorway or a room, before you pick up a call, spread loving kindness to the people in there. May they be well, may they be happy, may they be happy. Or may they be well, may they be happy, may they be healthy. Just that simple. Take just a second, stabilize, and open your heart. Invoke that metta and come and enter that space from your heart. And because it's not rote, I mean, it's a different person in that home every day, or, that room that you're walking into. you can do it again and again and again, and it can remain very alive. And if that's too complicated, because often it is, people are complicated and we have mixed feelings about them and they aren't always positive, can you just invoke that metta towards the little beings around you? The little bird in the tree, the little insects that are, around. There's all these little beings that surround us constantly, the little ones that no one ever thinks about. And they all really, I don't know if we've all seen animals react to loving kindness. They feel it. Even if, I mean, they feel it very strongly. We had a monk, Bhante Sumita, visit who was talking about taming animals from afar through loving kindness. It's astounding how powerfully they can feel it, even insects. Um, so if people are too complicated, just can you always be opening your heart again and again to all the little ones around you? Get that warm glow going. That's what you care about. Or just bring to mind your parents or your child, whatever it is, that quality of loving kindness the Buddha said so much about. It brightens the heart in a way. It's when you begin to tap into it on a regular basis, it's as if you've tapped into a frequency which is far beyond just you. It's hugely powerful. And the benefits of loving kindness were manifold. The Buddha said, one sleeps well, one wakes well, one dreams no evil dreams. Um, Human and non-human beings protect one. One is dear to the devas, the angels, if you believe in such things. One is safe from many dangers. One has a bright complexion, and one dies peacefully. And then one goes to a good rebirth as well. And I would say also, if you're concerned about dementia, this emotional substrate you create through the practice of loving kindness, as far as I've been able to tell, it outlasts the mind fading. And there's a monk named Mahagosananda who Longpo Pasno visited when he was on his deathbed, and his mind was totally gone. But Longpo Pasno said he was just an avatar of metta. That's it. So loving kindness, it's the Buddha's sleep advice, and it's your hedge against the mind will go, but the chitta can remain bright, like fog illuminated by sunrise. And when metta is a bit too much to ask, just for those who we have aversion towards, the difficult people in our lives, which is we all have, there's many means of dispelling resentment the Buddha spoke about. But one I think is very relevant is really considering those people. First, the Buddha said, look, you can spread loving kindness to them, compassion, equanimity. He skipped sympathetic joy, I think wisely, understanding that might be a bit much to ask towards those we don't like at the moment. One reflects that they're the owners of their own karma. And if none of those work, the fifth he gave us is just don't bring them to mind. That's okay. There's this sort of Western psychological conceit that you have to confront every demon right away. But the Buddha said it's okay if your mental state can't stay balanced, take the person that you can't think about clearly right now, write their name, put it in an envelope, put it in your cupboard, and just say for these 3 months, I'm not going to think about them. And then after 3 months, take it back out, see if you can hold them with care, or at least hold their thought without anger. That's okay. And the other thing is to really, and Ajahn Sona said, if you can't spread metta to someone, spread it to their chair. I really like that. But the other is to think of them as a child, holding their hand. Think of them on their deathbed, holding their hand. Be a little careful with that one. And think of them as your teacher. We would not develop greater breadth of heart or patience in the same way without those who push us. There's a famous story of Gurdjieff, a Sufi teacher, who had a very difficult person in his community that none of the other members liked. And one day Gurdjieff was gone, and the other community members chased this person away. They just went over the line. And when Gurdjieff got back, he said, "Where did that guy go?" And everyone said, we got fed up finally. We just told him to leave." And Gurdjieff said, "No, you need to go get him. I pay him to be here." He has a very special quality of making people as aversive as possible, as quickly as possible. And in Mahayana conception, the bodhisattvas can split off part of their minds and send them down as the difficult boss or the person on the street to push you and bring you patience. I just love that idea. So, who are your bodhisattvas? Who are your teachers? And I was at a monastery for a year where I had one monk who criticized me for almost everything. And initially, it was really hard, annoying. It was always hard. But after a time, I realized if I had a senior teacher giving me this much attention, refining my actions from how I closed doors to how I spoke, I would consider it such a gift. And so for that year, I took him as my teacher. We had to have some conversations. I had to establish boundaries. And you can really do this. Who are your teachers? And can you hold them as such? And the final impurities to be refined: thoughts of one's homeland, thoughts of one's color, vana, and thoughts of not wanting to be despised. I think all of those are amazing. The first two right now might be very relevant for people. When I returned to the US, I came on election night, actually, in 2020. And before I did, I was giving a foot rub to Longpo Sumedho, the senior Western monk in our tradition. And he said, you know, America's just a concept. It's a sankhara. And sankharas rise and they fall. And then he laughed. I don't want to trigger anyone. Obviously, we want to work for the good of the world. This is not an invitation towards apathy. There's, Ajahn Kovilo and I are on the Buddhist Global Relief Council with Bhikkhu Bodhi. There's room to do good. And the other advice I got when I returned to the US was Ajahn Siripani, who said, look, you can look at the news, but you have to have the determination to not let it give rise to even one unwholesome state, which is quite an ask. And how I'd boil that down to this context is saying, can we pull back our, especially when it comes to vana, you're considering your color of blue or red or whatever, and how you think of the homeland. Sense restraint with the news. Can you wait until, no news before noon, for example, and having one day a week where you don't look at the news? You could put it down even more than that, but at least that much. And understanding that, this mantra we have to stay informed, how many times do you need to look at the phone and the news every day to know enough to take action where necessary? So really taking that seriously and understanding that as a practitioner, you have a duty to care for your heart. It's the greatest gift you can give the world, is a pure heart. And it is a thing the world deeply needs. And that means taking care of your attention and directing your attention properly. Hegel said, evil lies in the gaze that sees evil all around it. And it's astounding how we can forget how much goodness is in our lives by the headlines, for the headlines. And in terms of giving up attachment to one's vana, and in this case, maybe I would say red or blue, not that we can't align ourselves and work for the benefit of whatever social cause or political party we find meaningful. Obviously, we want to make the world as good as it can be. And as you practice, it's important to understand you have touched a teaching which has come to you past the rise and fall of empires. 2,500 years. It has been carried on by monks and nuns who has resisted forced disrobal at the hands of the Red Guard in China. It's been carried on by monastics and lay people undergoing famine in Sri Lanka and carefully keeping these teachings. It's been a quiet thread through history that you've been given. And we have a duty to represent it, to carry it, to embody it, to honor it. And that can mean, in part, deciding when, you might be the one representative of this Dharma in someone's life. And, just taking that into account when you engage in conversation with people who are on your side of the political spectrum or on the opposite side. Like, where is your speech most worth treasuring? Is there a way to touch someone's Four Noble Truths, learn about what's making them suffer, what's their path, what makes their heart rise? It's very kind to meet, it's very common to meet kind people. It's very rare to meet curious people. And as you practice, it can really become almost a game. Like, can I find someone's dharmic language and touch them in a deep sense in their heart? And can you really represent something very precious that people are much more hungry for than you might think? Um, and just deciding in terms of discussing uh, political or other issues in any given context versus really trying to touch someone's deepest aspirations and what the Buddha most spoke to, their Four Noble Truths. I think that just becomes a relevant thing to consider as a practitioner. And finally, to understand, we want to do good things. And to note, the Buddha lived through a time that in many ways was as brutal as anything we experience now. Child mortality at 50%, famines, massacres, wars. One of his great disciples, King Bimbisara, was killed by his own son. The Buddha's whole clan, by the commentaries account, was massacred. Um, and the Buddha walked it with such care and equipoise and metta. And that is our inheritance as practitioners. Can we carry that into a world which desperately needs it? Can we bring gold into a world which I think could use some vision of that light in it? So, wish you all the best. And yeah, been a delight to begin to meet more and more people carrying out this practice and valuing what others value. So, may you all be well. Didn't even get to that not wanting to be despised one. That's one of the best. So we have time for Q&A. I don't know how that's going to work exactly, except that those on Zoom can raise your electronic hand or type things into the chat. And I assume the meditation hall might be able to find some way of asking questions as well.
Yeah, we can definitely do Q&A. So for people on Zoom, go ahead and raise your virtual hand, and then and then you can unmute yourself and speak. In the meditation hall, before someone speaks, I just need to unmute you. So Jen, if you can say something, or actually just kind of raise your physical hand so I can see you, then I can unmute you from back here.
What would people like to talk about? Lakshmi.
Thank you so much for all the practical advice and wisdom. And I have a question about right view, and I would love to hear sort of your take on just, right view and thinking about the role of curiosity and not being pulled into certain views and sort of like having tolerance for views that are different from yours. So just looking for a little bit of spaciousness around that.
Yeah, can you give me a little more context about where this is coming up? Like, yeah, just a little more.
I mean, you were talking about vanas, and I think I was thinking about at a collective level, but I think I'm actually more interested in even just like in my own life, interpersonal level, right? Like different people have we all have different stories we tell ourselves about what's happening, and sometimes those are in conflict, and hearing someone else's story about the same thing can trigger me. So I'm just kind of like, how do I reconcile all of that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a such a good question. The Buddha actually has a term for the bodily knot of views. I really love that. I one piece of practical advice I might offer is uh, who here, not that I'm going to be able to see everyone's hand, but who here has sort of practiced any form of nonviolent communication before? Marshall Rosenberg, or J. Oren Sofer, otherwise? Okay. Anyways, so one framework Marshall Rosenberg offers, which I use all the time, we're being given so many different techniques and things we should do. It gets exhausting, I know, but this one is worth it. It really is when you enter in a difficult conversation about views or anything, um, you frame the conversation first as your observation, then your feeling, then your need, and then request. Offner, we call it. So observation, feeling, need, request. Um, why I bring that up here is I find it really fleshes out a conversation. Often in those interpersonal discussions, one thing that can often happen is this happens a lot with my monastic brothers is I operate very much on the level of observation. Here's what's going on. But often people in my life, very often, they'll be operating a lot more from the level of feeling. So it looks like the views are clashing, but it's because actually uh, on the level of observation, but really what they're tapped into is a much different story of the feeling. And I just find that the first step to resolving conflicting views about a situation or something that came up, or even just finding empathy for each other, is really making sure you've at least moved through those first two levels of observation and feeling. So I noticed you walked in, you seemed really angry. This reminds me of that other time. My feeling, I felt scared, I feel worried, I feel weird about bringing this up even. My need is to feel like I can be with you in a safe space, like I can speak to these things. My request is tell me how that's landing for you and tell me how you're feeling. Um, so anyways, it might not seem like a direct answer to what you're saying, but I just find so often, yes, we can apply wisdom to looking at how someone came to their view. We can develop loving kindness. We can ask questions about how they came to that. But very often I find the quickest road to empathy and to understanding what story they're actually operating from is making sure you touch into those different strata of how someone's moving through the world, observation, what happened, and then the feelings below it. And that simple framework has saved my relationships so many times. It's so useful. So observation, feeling, need, request. Um, Lakshmi, did that help at all? I know it was kind of an oblique answer, and yet I find it's the most practical one for me in many cases.
Yeah, that was a really helpful framework. And then also, I mean, just it's all undergirded by curiosity, which
Mm.
is yeah, the key ingredient, it seems like.
Yeah, and forgiveness. The forgiveness in Buddhism is a understanding of one's own conditionality and others. And so often we just have to find what their initiating wound is. Dukkha leads people to sankhara, to action and intention. And often, like, we've all had that experience of like, why is this person like this? And then you learned what happened to them as a child or what's happening at home. And there's this sense of like, oh, of course. Like the views are still there, everything's the same, but you just understand. And it's the sense of wrongness and not understanding that doesn't let the mind let go. And so often, really, yeah, figuring out like where's the initiating wound? What's the suffering that gives rise to whatever is happening? And that can help a lot. And you're right, curiosity is the root to that. And then just being willing to listen. It's so rare to find people who are good listeners. And really having that be an ethic. Like if someone has a different view than you, can you learn about their view and just make a determination? I'm not going to respond with my own view for at least 10 minutes. Like just say, thank you, let me take that in for a little bit and then respond later. But like that kind of poise will shake people far deeper than you responding right away. It really, it's so strange to find people doing that. And yeah, and then holding your hands in Anjali. It's a very simple act, and it'll confuse some people, but it's very hard to be uh, belligerent when you're holding your hands in Anjali. So I think that's a skillful means as well.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, good luck, Lakshmi. Thank you. One interesting thing about the hands in Anjali is when the Buddha spoke about means of dispelling resentment, he said one should approach a person impure in speech and impure in body, like a monk in need of cloth would approach a piece of dirty cloth on the ground, and using their feet would tear off the dirty bit from the clean bit and pick up just the clean bit and move on. Even so, one looks to the good. One should approach someone impure in body but pure in speech, as a person in need of water would come to a pond covered in algae, and scraping off the algae would dip their hands and cup them with clear water and drink, and then move on. Even so, one looks to the good in that person. One should approach someone impure in body and impure in speech, but with occasional moments of clarity, as a person dying of thirst would come to a hoof print filled with water, and bending their lips to the water would drink so as not to stir up the silt. Even so, one looks to the good and does not kind of agitate the person. And one should look to someone impure in body, impure in speech, without clarity, as one would look at a person wandering through the desert and say, sick, alone, saying, may this person not come to harm, may they be helped. Even so, one looks at such a person with compassion. And finally, one looks to a person pure in speech, pure in body, with a pure heart, as a person in need of water would come to an oasis, and bathing and drinking their fill, would lie down on the bank. It's such an amazing set of similes. And there's so, as with so many of the Buddhist similes, you think you understand, and then you go deeper. And some of the deeper points are first, you can keep your distance from those people who have these impure pieces of them. Like the person who encounters the person of impure body and impure speech uses their feet to tear off the cloth. You know, they don't touch it with their hands. It's okay to not get too close to those who we know are toxic, but you still can look to the good. With people we know who are just doing so much damage to themselves and others, can we really understand that they're creating the conditions for their own deep misery in the future? And can we feel compassion? And here's the hidden part. I was reading the Pali, and when the person dips their hands in the water, the word that the Pali says is Anjali when they bring it to their mouth. So there's this humility that you can hold with people who are really difficult to us. And what's even cooler is when they talk about bending to the hoof print, that's a full bow. It's a full bow of humility. So, like, obviously, you need to draw boundaries. Obviously, you can't be a doormat, but what does it mean to hold that kind of humility when listening to those we disagree with and have trouble with? I love that set of similes. It's just the Buddha's genius shines through. Let's do one more since I just talked for like a long time, and then we probably do have to wrap up. It's hard to follow up on those words by the Buddha, but maybe we have someone in the hall.
Hi, Ajahn, this is Lauren. I was hoping, what was that last point that you said you didn't have time to discuss? I was hoping you could just discuss that in the last
Yeah.
couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah. So the fine impurities. Yeah, the Buddhist similes, I cannot tell you how many times I thought I've understood, and then you can just see what comes out of the enlightened mind imbued with samadhi. Um, so one purifies one's self of thoughts of one's homeland, thoughts of one's vana, color, and thoughts of not wanting to be despised. Isn't that great? And to note that need to be liked is so profound in us. We're constantly measuring our relationship to others in the hierarchy of a social environment. Always. I think they've done measurements on how people are constantly keeping track. And of the eight worldly conditions, the eight worldly winds, which some of you may know, pain, pleasure, gain, loss, fame, disrepute, and uh, praise and blame. Two of the four are about others' views on us. And you think about like, coming from our evolution, whether you were in or out of uh, the monkey group, or I don't even know what a group of monkeys is called, a monkey herd, it was more important than if you had food. I mean, it was absolutely key to our survival. So it's can hit so hard. So really noticing that and working with it actively. So a key thing I do is when you notice the FOMO, the fear of missing out in a social environment, or other things, the jealousy, those swirlings of emotion, um, do not act from it. Um, your goal in that moment is to understand the first noble truth of suffering and to let go of its cause, craving. So what I really do is, like, if you have the urge to speak into a space just to be heard, or to join a conversation just for fear of being left out, really just wait. Come to your center. If you can step out of the room, I do this very often. If you can step out of a room for 2 minutes and just close your eyes and just meditate and recenter, often you find you can re-enter the conversation with potency and power, and you won't have diluted yourself. Um, and or just start spreading metta to yourself and just get a glow going, and people will feel that glow, even if you're not speaking. Do that. Um, but do not act from that raw, vibrating wound that needs to be seen and heard. So this is how I work with not wanting to be despised. And it's important to see that Mara, which in Buddhism it could be considered the equivalent of Satan, but it's not. Mara is actually, he's a rebel prince in the highest sensual heaven. It's kind of funny. So he's a very powerful deva in the Buddhist cosmology. And, in Buddhism, Ajahn Sucitto says, look, the Buddha had cosmology, we have psychology. You can map all these things onto mental states, which is why they're so useful, whether or not you believe in such things. But Mara, what's so interesting is he can co-opt everything below. And we asked Ajahn and my teacher about Mara once, and he really said, look, Mara is the part of you that wants to be recognized, that wants to be foremost, that wants to be seen. And so when you're giving, it's the part that wants everyone to see you give. Um, and just acknowledging we all have Mara in the sidecar until we're enlightened a little bit, but really noticing that. So like, when you want to give a gift, can you actually give it to someone else to give, or can you give in quiet? In Thai, this is called putting gold leaf on the back of a Buddha, because people will put gold leaf on the front of the Buddha often, but this is putting where no one can see. Just make it a practice, anonymous acts of kindness. Um, but I think the biggest thing is just working with the pain of social interaction and jealousy and wanting to be seen, and working with not wanting to be despised in that way. And just every time you feel that compulsion to make yourself foremost, prominent, first, just stop, come back, feel metta, close your eyes, wait 2 minutes, and then move from a different space. And I just find that simple act again and again it has a profound, it humbles the heart. The second two noble truths are a spiral staircase towards transcendence, the noble truths of nibbana, cessation, and the Noble Eightfold Path. The first two noble truths of understanding suffering and letting go of craving are a spiral staircase down towards humility. And that's when you're in that place of suffering, that's when you just be with the pain, understand it, and let yourself become humbled. Um, that's that movement of the heart, and it's a different movement, but it's as important. It just takes a lot of care and patience and compassion. I think I just went over time.
I don't think anyone minds.
Okay, okay, good. Well, can I finish with one poem then? It's my favorite.
No, please do. Please do.
So it's a Mary Oliver poem that I think many of you have heard. But I find the language of happiness and well-being is very relevant for this path. This path is good in the middle, good in the beginning, good in the middle, the good in the end. And there's huge well-being to be found on it, and it leads to happiness. But in the face of the difficulty that life presents us, I find the language of purpose and duty are very meaningful and very sustaining and robust. And there's a Mary Oliver poem I really love which speaks to it. It's called The Journey. And if you found these teachings, I really think you found your journey. It's so rare to have found a path this precious. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, that the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, and their melancholy was terrible. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. Though the wind pried with its fingers at the house's foundations. It was already late and a dark night, and the road filled with fallen branches and stones. But slowly, as you walked deeper into that night, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and you began to hear a new voice, which you recognized as your own, which kept you company as you walked further into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. So good luck to everyone. Don't take for granted these teachings and this life of practice we've all gotten, and rejoice in having a family of people who are practicing with you. It's a real gift. And yeah, if any of you want to tune into any, we have a robust online community and daily meditations, just clearmountainmonastery.org, and we'd love to see any of you. If you come near Seattle, please reach out to us. We can find you a place to stay, and we just love to have you visit. And it's a pleasure to meet Mountain Stream. I hope it's the first of many such meetings and ongoing friendship. So back to you, Lauren, and Sadhu, for having me.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I'm speechless, really. It was quite profound and wonderful. And I feel like everyone in this room is feeling similarly to me. So we would love to have you again. Thank you. Deep, deep gratitude.
You. Yeah, Mary Oliver's great. And the Buddha is even better. The Buddha.
And you're good too.
I'm just quoting the Buddha.
Thank you so much.
Do we finish in any special way, Lauren? Or
We usually just end with a short metta. So if you want to do a quick dedication or 30-second metta, that would be nice.
yeah. So maybe people can hold in their hearts anyone that they think could hear or feel this that could use some goodness right now. And I'll give a traditional Pali blessing. Sabbe tio iwachantu sabarogo inasadu mate boat wanderayo sukitika yukoboa Abhiwadana silisa nichang Buddha pachahino Chataro dhamma vadanti Ayuwano sukham Palang bhavati sabba mangalam Rakantu sabba devata Sabba Buddha dhamma sangha nupavena sarasodi Bhavantu Te. Just as rivers fill the ocean full, so this gift flows to the departed. All you wish and want may it quickly come to be, like the moon on a full moon night. May there be every good blessing. May the angels always protect you. By the power of the Buddha, may you always be well. May there be every good blessing. May the angels always protect you. By the power of the Dhamma, may you always be well. May there be every good blessing. May the angels always protect you. By the power of the Sangha, may you always be well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good night.